Hello and welcome back to the Anti-Aging Hacks podcast. My guest today is Julie Olson, who's a triple certified nutritionist and functional medicine expert. She's been named a top 23 expert to watch in the health and wellness space by the Los Angeles Tribune Magazine. She's the host of the Healthy Body, Healthy Hair, The Truth About Hair Loss Summit, $50,000 winner of PubCon's book publishing contest, and creator of the Healthy Hair Fix program, which personalizes hair growth strategies by linking health, lab results, and lifestyle to avoid long-term medications, procedures, and products. Julie's mission is to help women worldwide restore their health, hope, and hair naturally to look and feel their absolute best. I'm excited to bring Julie on because we share a passion for hair, and she's just concluded recently a summit where she brought a lot of experts together to talk about hair loss. Well, I'm going to ask Julie a lot of questions about what she learned on the summit, but also how she helps women get the crowning glory back in their lives and have the good hair that they had when they were younger. Would you like to get thicker, fuller, and stronger hair? Then make sure to check out fullyvital.com. The team's come up with fantastic and natural products that help rejuvenate your hair, but also delay and reverse gray hairs. So if you're interested in better hair, go to fullyvital.com and use the code ANTIAGINGHACKS for 15% off your order. Are you enjoying the shows on this channel? Then please make sure to hit the subscribe button down below so you can get notified when we release new episodes. Our goal with this show is to help you and give you practical tips that you can use to slow down and reverse your aging so you can live and feel younger and live your best life. With that said, let's get on with the show. Julie, welcome to the Anti-Aging Hacks Show.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Okay, so let's dive right in. Tell us your background, how you got into hair to begin with. Why are you triple certified in nutrition? And tell us about your summit as well.
Okay, well, let's see. I start out how I got into this space. I used to be a senior media research analyst at Warner Brothers, and I got the call that my mother had stage 3 breast cancer and was going into emergency surgery the next day. So even though I loved my job and this everything, I decided to move back to my hometown to support her. And in that transition, working in television there, I got disenchanted with the business and more interested why she got so sick. And realizing after I started to study these things that I was putting blinders on my own health. And in that transition, when I finally slowed down, I was experiencing extreme hair loss. It was coming out in clumps. It was here, there, it was everywhere. And I just quit and I went back to school to study nutrition and functional medicine. And I've been doing that now for 13 years. I didn't start out focusing on female hair loss because I was working for other practices and so forth. So I had to focus on a bunch of different conditions. But when I opened my own practice, I noticed a lot of women would come to me, and just like myself, they were a hot mess. I had a lot of health issues, but their hair loss was their number one complaint. And once I started diving deeper with functional labs and figuring out why they were having hair loss, I discovered a bunch of other imbalances and health problems. And sure enough, once those resolved, their hair grew back naturally. So I'm very passionate about helping women because also when I experienced that hair loss, just like you, I went to multiple practitioners and I was just dismissed, saying, oh, you can get on medications, lifelong medications, and there's no other way we can help you, and you just have to kind of suck it up. But that I knew there was a better way. And like you, I did a ton of research. I love researching anyway, but I really geeked out on it and looked everywhere. And I'm so happy to have found you because I've also found that a lot of supplements and serums out there are not quality like yours. So I'm so happy to hook up with you and gonna do some things together.
Totally. I'm excited for that as well, Julie. So thank you for sharing your background. You went to the fast life, you went from the fast life to the nerdy life, and now you're looking at research papers in your free time as opposed to, what do we do when we're young? Okay, so that's fair. Let's talk about some of the reasons, and then we'll get into some of the stuff that you do, right? For men, it seems like hair loss, again, there can be, when you dig deeper, there can be other reasons for it, but majority, it's been implicated or hormones are implicated for men, meaning the DHT, testosterone to DHT conversion seems to be problematic. DHT goes to the hair follicles, starts shrinking them over time, and the hair get thinner and thinner and wispier, and then pretty soon they don't have the energy to grow out anymore, and they're basically gone. And at some point, the follicle shuts down. Luckily for women, that's a lot of it can be the same, but at least they don't go bald in any one area, right? They do have hair thinning, which is more diffuse. Even if it's localized just to their crown or the front of the scalp, it's still diffuse, which means they don't lose a lot of the hair in any particular area. So when you work with women, Julie, what are you seeing as some of the causes behind what's causing the hair loss to appear? And then are there triggers that maybe something happens and then the hair loss manifests itself?
Right, right. And before I answer that, I just want to go back on what you said. I do mostly find women with the diffuse hair loss, but some of them do have the autoimmune alopecia.
Yeah.
And that starts out in circles, like the size of a quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And they can hide it. And the thing with women is they can hide their hair loss, unlike men that have more the pattern.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, they'll use extensions that makes it worse because it pulls on their hair, and use those fiber sprays that you were talking about, which I don't think the chemicals in there are good anyway. So that leads me to another reason hair loss, I think, has become so prevalent is the xenoestrogens that are so prevalent in plastics and products worldwide. And then the stress and chronic diseases that have just skyrocketed worldwide. But then you get into things like malabsorption, detoxification issues, mast cell activation. That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
People don't understand that. Viruses, including the COVID, poor circulation, infections, pathogens, parasites, autoimmunity, of course, bacterial infections, just chronic inflammation, hormonal imbalances, being underactive, too active, over exercising, rapid weight loss that wreaks havoc on your hair, candida, nutrient deficiencies. So there's over 50 causes of female hair loss, but I put them into 4 functional categories, and that's inflammatory,
Mm-hmm.
digestive, stress-induced, and hormonal. And there's also overlaps in that.
Okay, inflammatory, digestive, stress-induced, and hormonal. Okay, so
Right,
let's
right.
touch on these one by one. With the hormonal aspects, is it the same? I believe it's the same mechanism of testosterone converting to DHT, and the DHT then going to the hair follicles and causing the thinning. So is it the imbalance between the male hormones and the female hormones in women that ultimately leads to hair loss?
It is, but a lot of women have thyroid issues
Yeah.
where they're either hypothyroid or hyper or hypo,
Mm-hmm.
or it progresses to Hashimoto's or even Graves'. I work with a lot of women with Graves' and Hashimoto's. That's going to cause hair loss.
Mm-hmm.
It's a balance of hormones. And then even checking the parathyroid. People don't do that.
Yeah.
And checking this all, having a whole thyroid panel, not just checking the TSH, what all doctors do. You got a T3,
Yeah.
T4, reverse T3, free T3, you have to look at everything. You have to look at those numbers in a functional. And the thing is, when women's hormones also get off in menopause, postmenopause, because they lose estrogen and progesterone, which you need for hair growth.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, women can have elevated DHT that can play a role, not as much as men. But at the end of the day, people don't realize our hormones are created in our gut. So I look at the gut for, I'll check hormones and so forth, but if their gut's out of balance, which I will definitely check, if they're not absorbing nutrients or they have detoxification issues, they're not properly detoxifying certain estrogens or hormones, or they're not methylating properly, or they have too many heavy metals or mold toxicity, and it's all manifesting in the gut, and then it can create hair loss. So it's very important to look at everything and do some detective work to figure out what is out of balance, because yeah, your hormones will be out of balance. And then it goes back to that stress thing. You could be having chronic stress, living the lifestyle like I was living, and there's no way you can be absorbing your nutrients
Right.
because you're constantly in the fight or flight, or
Yeah.
maybe you're not sleeping much and it's really hard for you to absorb those nutrients. And the nutrients that you do absorb are going to go to your vital organs first
Hmm.
before they go to
Right.
your hair, which is not per se
Which is
a vital organ.
expendable, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Out of the four items you mentioned, the inflammatory, digestive, hormonal, and stress, seems like most people can have a direct impact if they choose to, most easily on their stress levels. They could, either meditate or go take walks in the park or take adaptogens that can help reduce and balance the stress level so the cortisol pathway comes back into normal so they're not being chased by a tiger, all day, every single day. Again, easier said than done because we as a society love stress. We think stress is a badge of honor. We think the more stressed we are, the more we're checking emails at 9 p.m. and responding to them, the better everybody else perceives us to be. And ultimately, this is going to lead to long-term issues and health problems and even, worse debilitating conditions than just a sickness or an illness or even hair loss. And so if we just let's focus on stress for a couple minutes. And this question for you is so we know that stress can cause challenges. It can also up the anti or the inflammatory pathways, which leads to alopecia areata. What typically do you recommend people do for their stress to at least get one of those pillars back into balance before you dive into everything else?
Get enough quality sleep
Hmm.
and balance out your intake of nutrients. Balance your blood sugar. If it's not balanced, you're going to
Hmm.
have cortisol spiked, and then it's going to plummet, and you're going to have insulin problems, and that's another cause of hair loss.
Yeah.
So, getting that 60 grams of protein or more per day, at least 20 grams per meal, good quality protein that has the essential and branched chain amino acids that are really vital for hair growth. But that's going to help with your energy, your immune system, and also the inflammation and stress levels.
Okay. So help balance your stress levels, get good sleep, get enough protein, make sure there's no insulin spikes or sugar spikes in your body, which can come from eating too many high or easy to dissolve carbs in your body. So don't eat simple carbs, eat complex carbs if you must.
Right.
Definitely mix that up with protein, have some fats as well. So
Hmm.
sleep and diet seem to be important in this aspect of reducing the stress angle. Okay. But I think from a reducing overall stress, like mental stress, we all know how to do it. It's just, are we able to spend the time to calm down, to relax, to downshift, as opposed to living in that fight or flight all day long? So that's number one. Now let's get into the digestive because a lot of things start from the gut. As you said, many hormones and neurotransmitters, many of those things are critical and start in the gut, but also all your nutrition is coming through the gut. And so it's got to be as healthy as possible. So what do you see that's wrong? Well, there's plenty wrong with the gut today, but in the women you talk to, what are you seeing as some common conditions, and how are you going about helping them alleviate them or ameliorate them?
I see a lot of women come in and they're on ton of supplements. They're eating great. They're exercising. But once I start doing functional labs, their gut is a mess. And what I'm finding are markers of malabsorption, of inflammation, kind of what I just talked about. I'm even finding a common marker in the stool tests that shows they've got SIBO and mast cell activation. It's complicated. Um, and then also methylation markers that are not methylating properly.
Hmm.
So it kind of
Okay.
goes back to what I originally said. So our gut is called the microbiome. That's the new thing. It has zillions of bacteria. Actually, have more bacteria in our gut than cells on our body. It's like a 10-to-1 ratio. And they've discovered this new scalp hair follicle microbiome. And they've also discovered that demands an enormous amount of energy, not only from nutrients, but from ATP in our mitochondria. So we really need to be getting those nutrients absorbed, and also circulation. Like I know your supplements have got some things that help with circulation, but getting that movement, because if the nutrients don't get to our scalp, because so many people are just sitting all day anyway,
Hmm.
that's another problem. But this whole microbiome needs to be healthy, and I find a lot of women, it's out of balance. They have more bad bacteria than good bacteria, and what happens is they crowd out the good bacteria. So you need to you have to have a diverse microbiome, including your scalp hair follicles, to crowd out the bad bacteria. There's only so much space, even though they discovered all these different strains of bacteria, and they discover more and more each day.
Right.
All those, Lactobacillus acidophilus, it was discovered by a Bulgarian. So there are all those funky Bulgarian names.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. So guts are a problem for a lot of people, especially in today's world. And so when you do these tests and you find that there's things we have to do to address what's going on in the gut, how long does it take to repopulate the gut with healthy bacteria and to bring it back into balance so it's not a problem, so it's absorbing the nutrients that it's supposed to be, so there's no SIBO or there's none of that dysfunction that's going on in the gut that you're seeing?
You can do it rapidly. I mean, you can do it within 7 days, but I put these ladies on a protocol for 3 months.
Okay. No, that makes sense. It's what we see as well on the product side is that it takes about 3 months to see results. And so I'm glad you are seeing them through and improving that over time because then they'll start to see the results and they'll feel that what they're doing is helping, which means it's going to cement that behavior into their life so they can keep doing it. And anytime they have hair loss in the future, they're going to say, oh, that's how I fix it. Let me go back to the basics. Let me go back to the healthy life that I was doing because now I've gotten off track again. Okay, so gut, you're saying can be fixed in about 7 days, but ideally, what you want to do is you work with them on a 90-day cycle to make sure that's optimized. What about the other two pillars? If we talk about the inflammatory pillar, which causes alopecia areata, which you said has these circles and they're shiny circles, so it's very easy to see alopecia areata because it's not like any other hair loss you've seen. Other hair loss, you lose a little bit of hair here and there, but the alopecia areata is autoimmune and all of your hair in a particular circle goes away, so your scalp is shiny like a baby's bottom. And so it's very easy to see what's going on. And it also freaks people out because they go, what is going on with my hair?
Yeah. And
Again,
also,
harder
there's
for,
an urgency to that too. I mean, as you know, if there's scar to the hair follicle, it's really impossible to reverse.
yes,
But going back to the gut, I just want to mention a study that's in my published abstract, and that's when these subjects, there was four of them, two of them had alopecia universalis. There were two men,
yeah,
actually. So that's when you lose hair over your entire body.
yeah,
And they were told they'd never grow their hair back. Well, they took what's called a fecal microbial transplant,
yeah.
and they grew back their hair. These are PubMed studies, but it's on my abstract just to prove the point that you get your gut healthy. It actually makes a huge difference.
Totally.
But back to the other markers, I have what's called the Healthy Hair Fix 5R protocol. And that's remove, replace, re-inoculate, repair, and rebalance. And the first R is very important to do properly and not skip to like the other ones. The first R is remove. So that's where you need to remove all the stressors, whether it's in your GI tract or your environment. And that's where the testing comes in. It's so valuable. But also just really taking a look at your environment. If you have mold or, you have some heavy metals, or maybe you're in a very stressful relationship or job or some other things that are just getting you out of balance. And even the xenoestrogens that I talked about at the beginning, maybe there's something you're using your skin is your biggest organ. You know, you're putting on your skin every day. That's just messing. That's getting it out of balance. And so I'm very thorough of making sure they remove all those stressors, those toxins before you go any further. Because really, if you don't get those out, you're kind of wasting your time and money by taking any supplements or trying to move forward in the process, is what I found. And a lot of people have come to me, gone to other practitioners where they've skipped to the repair phase per se, or the re-inoculate before they removed everything. And it's like picking a scab, right? And just not letting it heal. You got to get the toxins out before it can heal, and you can go further on. So that's where I spend a lot of time. Sometimes it takes longer than 3 months just for that particular remove phase of the 5R.
Okay. And this is 5 hours in your protocol?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if the first phase could take up to 3 months, what's the total program length?
About 15 months, 12 to 15. I mean, you have to be patient here. I mean, it took people a while to get where they're at, and it can be faster depending on if they're going to follow along or not.
Mhm.
But it can take up to a year or so.
Gotcha. Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's definitely thorough. So coming back to the alopecia areata, it's a complicated condition. I think we can all agree on that. But if you reduce the stress, if you balance the stress levels, that's a big help. If you balance the gut, if you get that back into good function and absorption, that will be a big help as well. So you're knocking out a lot of those instances, and maybe adding anti-inflammatory foods or anti-inflammatory diet might also be helpful in that. We certainly don't address or help people with alopecia areata because it's an autoimmune condition. And so we guide them towards help, and would love to share your contact with those people so they can get some more help in that area, because it is challenging. A lot of times they end up going to the dermatologist to get a steroid shot for the autoimmunity or the inflammation that is causing. But that I don't like
That's a
steroids.
Band-Aid.
Yeah, I don't like steroids. And again, to your point, it's not addressing what's actually going on the inside. Okay, so in the last one we kind of touched on is the hormone, and you said there's xenoestrogens, there's also the menopause, and as women get older, the estrogen, the progesterone, and the testosterone get imbalanced, and then there's also thyroid, which we see, especially women over 40, starting to see low thyroids, low thyroid, but also high thyroid. It could be, and then the autoimmune thyroid, which could be Hashimoto's or even the Graves' part. Uh, and so how do you tackle the hormone aspect of hair loss, and how do you figure out which one is maybe the problematic factor that's causing the hair thinning?
By testing, there's different labs you can do. And anywhere from, there's different lab markers to figure out exactly which ones. But going back to the autoimmune, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I lost my hair. I didn't realize I had celiac. And alopecia areata and universalis, they're attacking the hair follicle. So I do address autoimmune hair loss, and the same steps. Other practitioners, these 4 or 5 R's, some of them use the 4 R's, but lab. And I learned it through the Institute of Functional Medicine, where I did my training as a functional medicine practitioner. I mean, they're the same steps that we're trained to do even for autoimmune conditions.
I see, because they have a protocol and a plan to kind of help the body
Mm-hmm.
heal, and which
Right.
also addresses the autoimmune conditions and
Right.
helps ameliorate them. Okay, got it.
Right.
Okay, so I was going to ask you how long it took, but you already answered that question. What about your perspective on hair growth or hair loss shampoos? There's, again, lots of people making all these claims about shampoos that are supposed to regrow your hair. What's your perspective on that?
Oh boy. Yeah. There's also been, as you know, some lawsuits with some well-known hair product companies, but I would say avoid the top 5 chemicals: formaldehyde, parabens, phthalates, sulfates, and propylene glycol.
Glycol,
I'm
yeah.
not,
Yeah.
I'm not a chemist, but I thought those in the research I've done are the top 5 to avoid. And, you know, formaldehyde, especially, I would say would be number 1. It's used in a lot of, I guess, hair soothing and straightening treatments.
Hmm.
And wow, some of these straightening treatments that African American women have been doing, they've found out recently that can cause cancer. So it's very, very, very concerning because they can also, I guess, cause, as I have found in my research, can cause respiratory issues, headaches, skin irritation, hair loss. They're known to be carcinogenic. So
Okay.
you probably know more about this than I do
Yeah.
as far as the shampoos and chemicals and so forth. But I
Totally.
mean,
Yeah.
I also say find a shampoo that's gluten free. I mean, most of these women, they have a gluten, if they're not celiac, they've got a gluten sensitivity.
Hmm.
And there's no reason you should be putting it on your scalp. So
Yeah. Good idea. So avoid those chemicals that Julie mentioned. Yeah, my perspective on these shampoos is that they don't sit on your scalp long enough to have to make very much of a difference at all. At least a hair growth serum or a hair growth oil with active ingredients is sitting in your scalp for 4 to 6 to 8 hours daily. And that can at least help remediate or address some of the challenges that your scalp is having and improve the scalp environment. But shampoos are probably the lowest item on the totem pole when it comes to having any effect on hair thinning. There's only, I guess, there's only data or published studies on one ingredient in shampoos, which is caffeine, that has been able to penetrate through the hair follicles. And it has been small levels of it have been tested in the blood, which is how they found out that it's actually coming in through the shampoo. So maybe if you had to use one, I would recommend a caffeine shampoo, but avoid all the challenging ingredients and the chemicals, especially the toxic chemicals that Julie mentioned, because those are going to hurt your hair long term, but also hurt your health. Okay, you had also mentioned, Julie, about your perspective on women having extensions on their scalp. And so what I've heard is that there's different types of extensions. Obviously, there's clip-ons, which you can use for the evening when you're going out, but there's also the ones that you glue in that are attached to your hair for long term. And I know it makes women feel like a goddess and everybody wants to feel great and live their best life. I totally get it. But on the other hand, these extensions may also damage your hair long term because you're pulling on them, even though it's not a lot of weight, but it's pulling on them long term. So what's your perspective on extensions?
I completely agree with you because it's pulling on your hair and your scalp. I mean, it's the same scenario with those tight braids that
Hmm.
pulls on your scalp and that can cause hair loss. It's just that the pressure,
Yeah,
even putting your hair in a tight ponytail for long periods of time is not recommended.
yeah, yeah.
And it makes
This
sense. I mean, it's pulling on the hair. It's not natural. It's not nice.
totally. You have to be nice and kind to your hair. What This is called traction alopecia, and traction alopecia again, it's the traction, is the pulling that's happening in your hair over a long time. And what's interesting about this is that over time you can get scarring on your hair because it's pulling on it. So your hair follicle starts to scar, which means this can lead to permanent hair loss. You can never get this back because the follicle actually gets scarred and shuts down. Most types of hair loss are temporary if you can fix the issues. Predominantly the hormonal, meaning the DHT one, is not, because you see bald men walking around, they're not regrowing their hair. But a lot of the ones when it comes to gut, for example, or stress or nutrition, your hair can grow back if you
Right.
address the underlying conditions. But
Right.
traction alopecia and DHT related loss are the ones that seem to be more permanent. So be very, very careful with tight braids, cornrows, and especially also with extensions, even though they make you look amazing. I get it. Okay, I think that's all I had for you, Julie. So again,
Okay.
in closing, can women, here's an interesting question, can women at the age of 50, 60, even older, get healthy hair? I'm not saying hair that you had when you were 20, but can they have thick, healthy, and beautiful hair at any age?
Again, it depends on the type of hair loss, but if they have the type like the telogen effluvium, that's more stress related, nutrient related, some of these that we've been talking about, and if they do some work and follow what we're talking about here, yes, they definitely can have that hair. Not when they were young. I mean, aging does affect your hair.
Yeah.
But they don't have to have very thinning hair or go bald per
Yeah.
se. There's something you can do about it. I'm 60 years old.
You're 60?
I'm 60, yeah.
No way. Wow. You look great.
Yeah, there's no, my dad, he had a full head of hair. I mean, yeah, this absolutely.
Hmm. Okay, so it's possible and it's something that you can go for. It is available to you. Julie, where can people find you? Where can they work with you? Tell us all the details.
They can go to my website. They can find through julieolson.com. That's OLSON, OLSON. My website's Fortitude Functional Nutrition, but it's easier to find through my name, julieolson.com. And my social media handles are Julie Olson FN for functional nutritionist. And yeah, I've got a lot of resources on my website and yeah.
Okay.
Really
Make sure to check out Julie's website and read up on all the research she's been doing and the recent summit she's done around hair loss. And there's more news to come on that front. With that said, Julie, thank you very much for coming on the Anti-Aging Hacks podcast. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you.